An NBA arena with a retractable roof? Well, that just sounds flat out ridiculous. And yet, that might not even be the most outlandish aspect of the story behind efforts to get the damn thing built in Las Vegas. AllNet Resort and Arena was going to bring basketball to Sin City with its audacious retractable roof basketball facility along with connected resort. Instead, all we got was a lot of hot air, people saying they had money but never actually being able to produce that money, an ill-fated groundbreaking ceremony, and no arena. I'm Cheyenne Hollis, this is The Touchback, and today let's talk about the most ridiculous stadium to never be built.
When will something finally happen with AllNet Arena?
AllNet Resort and Arena, much like its namesake, was nothing but net. Not a swish, mind you, though. It was one of those free throws that misses the rim entirely and grazes the net on the way down. Close, but ultimately a humiliating failure. The project was the brainchild of Jackie Robinson. No, not that Jackie Robinson. There you go. Basketball player Jackie Robinson had a connection to Vegas, having played for UNLV during the 1970s. In press materials for the project, and basically any sort of media coverage the project did receive, Jackie Robinson is constantly referred to as ex-NBA player Jackie Robinson. While technically true, he had nothing more than a cup of coffee as a pro. Robinson played 22 games across 3 seasons for 3 different teams. In other words, LaRon Profit had a longer, more successful career. This type of embellishment, by the way, is something that becomes a trend throughout our story. We begin in 2004 with the closure of locally popular Wet n Wild water park on the Las Vegas Strip. With high-density, high-rise projects all the rage in Vegas at this moment in time, developers targeted this plot for a potential redevelopment. The water park was shut after the summer 2004 season, with plans in place to turn the site into one of those high-density resort, casino, condominium projects that were popping up all along the strip at this period in time. That project would never see the light of day. Instead, it was sold to another development group who set their sights on building the tallest tower in the United States of America. Dubbed Crown Las Vegas, those behind the project apparently did no homework because their plan was rejected by the FAA since it would have been too close to the airport and a distraction for airplanes. They tried to finagle their plans a few different times, resubmitting them, but simply put, a massive high-rise skyscraper anywhere near an airport was never going to work, and eventually they gave up on the idea. Having punted on those plans, the focus then became on turning this location into a stadium. Silver State Arena first launched in 2010. The proposed 20,000 seat facility was going to be capable of hosting just about anything under the sun. NBA, NHL, UNLV home basketball games, rodeo, concerts, you name it, and this venue wanted to host it. It must be noted, though, that this was one of 4 proposed arena projects for Las Vegas at the time, none of which would actually proceed. Each one of these was asking for some sort of public funding, something that MGM, the perhaps largest player or one of the largest players in Vegas, absolutely opposed because they felt it was unfair to give money to a potential competitor. Of course, MGM also had a dog in the fight. They were aiming to build their own privately financed arena. They would team up with AEG in 2003, and together they would launch what would eventually become known as T-Mobile Arena. As for Silver State Arena, with no public funds forthcoming, the project just lay dormant for a few years. That wasn't until Jackie Robinson wanted to use the site for his own project, AllNet Resort and Arena. It's safe to say, though, the timing of his announcement was pretty peculiar. Not only was he 9 months behind the announcement from MGM and AEG on their stadium project, but he announced his plans on December 23rd. Or in other words, 2 days before Christmas. It is safe to say that this time of the year is not the best to make your huge announcements or to get out your plans for a massive project like this, because simply put, no one's paying attention. Then again, had people been paying attention, they might not have liked what they saw. Regardless, Robinson and AllNet Resort and Arena were facing a race against the clock to beat the rival MGM AEG Arena project. Robinson announced a near identical timeline for his arena, a mid-2014 groundbreaking and opening by 2016. Spoiler alert, that was never on the cards. For some reason, Robinson and the team working on AllNet Resort and Arena felt their project, their stadium, it needed a eye-catching, a show-stopping feature. Why that is something I don't quite understand. I get the idea of wanting to do something with pop and circumstance for the Las Vegas Strip area. It's sort of what it's known for, but it's also a stadium. The attraction's going to be what's inside, not the features of a venue. Never let common sense get in the way of a good plan, though. AllNet Resort and Arena was launched, and the first renderings feature an absolutely ridiculous, a completely preposterous retractable roof. Even for pie-in-the-sky pipe dreams, first stage real estate project renders, which are notoriously outlandish, this made no sense. Why did a basketball venue need a retractable roof? Despite that logic gap existing, it did not stop those behind the project from just gushing on and on about how cool this would be. Here is what Brett Ewing of the Cunningham Group, the company designing the arena, had to say. We want the retractable roof to be a feature that people want to see. Let's get real. There is only one roof, one ceiling in the world that people will actually pay money to see, and that is the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican. On a side note, completely unrelated by the way, Titian, a far superior painter than Michelangelo. Also, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of other better frescoes in Italy to see than what's on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. I know, I'm getting sidetracked on a topic only I care about, so let's put the Renaissance art away for another day and get back on track with this ridiculous Las Vegas arena. The general consensus about AllNet Arena's roof was that it was a completely unnecessary gimmick that offered little to no real value. The bigger issue with the roof was price. T-Mobile Arena only cost $375 million to build, and while it lacked, those hallmark, ridiculous, over-the-top features such as a retractable roof, it's still an outstanding place to watch just about any sort of event you would go to attend. And, it doesn't have a retractable roof, but the facade's still pretty cool, all things considered. Robinson's facility was going to be much more expensive than T-Mobile Arena at $690 million to build, and the entire complex with the resort and the hotels and the bowling alley and the retail areas and all of that stuff would come in at a price tag of $1.4 billion. Where was all of this cash coming from? That is a question no one ever seemed to have an answer to. There was always talk from the AllNet Resort and Arena group about how investors were excited to build this project, and perhaps even more laughably about how they could have started earlier, but they wanted to make sure all of the financing was in place. Then when it came time to put up the funds, well, everyone had lots to say, but few dollars to show. This did not stop Robinson from organizing a groundbreaking ceremony for his billion-dollar-plus resort and arena. Robinson called in a bunch of favors, especially among his UNLV connections, to get familiar figures to this event. Hell, even Jerry Tarkanian, the legendary UNLV basketball coach, was on hand. Look, say what you will about Tark, but dude is a huge draw in Vegas. The ceremony was basically what you would expect from these nonsense groundbreaking events anyway. Dudes in suits cosplaying with hard hats and shovels, despite the fact that this isn't actually a groundbreaking and it signifies absolutely nothing. The biggest highlight, or the biggest sort of newsworthy thing to emerge from the groundbreaking ceremony, though, would be this. Everybody asked seemed to have a different story regarding the arena's financing. This reality becomes crystal clear in a Las Vegas Review Journal article covering this groundbreaking event. In one point in the story, Robinson's financial advisor claimed financing was 100% confirmed and the project could have been started years ago. That's how solid the funding was. This was contradicted by others who said they were still looking at ways to attract funds, including the notorious EB-5 investor visa program. What's going on here? Was the project 100% financed and ready to go, or did it still need to raise funds? This question seemingly had a different answer depending on who you asked. And for Robinson's part, all he wanted to do was talk about NBA realignment and how it would support Las Vegas being put in the Pacific Division or some other nonsense. Meanwhile, MGM and AEG had broken ground on T-Mobile Arena 6 months earlier and had zero funding concerns. Their project was on track to open as scheduled. They were also working behind the scenes diligently to ensure their arena was a moneymaker regardless of if it had a professional sports team or not. Remember, the NHL was not locked into Las Vegas when that project broke ground. While it was wildly assumed that it was going to get an expansion franchise, that was no mean a gimme. And MGM and AEG were going to make sure that regardless of what happened on that front, 220 plus days a year, something would be happening at T-Mobile Arena. As for AllNet Arena, they were bogged down with other issues. Namely, Robinson couldn't get a development agreement from Clark County, which meant financing couldn't be accessed, which meant no work at the site began. By 2015, there were some signs of prep work happening, but no construction had begun yet, and the timeline for AllNet Arena's opening was pushed back to 2017. A few months later, and funding issues threatened to derail their AllNet resort and arena. It turns out that confirmed financing Robinson and his partners had touted, well, it wasn't quite confirmed. The group's plight was laid bare when they were sued by SL Hair Capital about lying over numerous things regarding their project and the money behind it. The group had hired SL Hair to secure additional investment in the stadium. However, they were also caught lying to the firm several times over what money the company did have, what the plans were for the project, who was involved with the project. It was just a total mess. More importantly though, why was AllNet hiring a financial investment firm like this when, according to Robinson's own financial advisor, 100% of the funding was already in place? That does not make sense, to say the least. Also, this article calling Jackie Robinson an NBA star is a generous characterization. It would be like me claiming to be a successful YouTube content creator. It's just patently untrue. As for the lawsuit, well, it just slowed down the AllNet Resort and Arena project even further. It also came to absolutely embarrass the group trying to get the stadium built in 2017 when it was revealed by AllNet Arena's legal team that there were difficulties in funding. Of course, that wouldn't have been an issue if they hadn't gone on record several times saying financing and funding were already in place, 100% confirmed. By the end of 2017, it seemed as if finally everything had been sorted out, everything was in place, and AllNet Resort and Arena was ready to go, this time with a few tweaks to the original concept. The revamped plans included a second hotel tower along with a few other adjustments to the retail area and whatnot, and this pushed costs to $2.4 billion, more than $1 billion over what the original concept would have cost. This did lead to a crucial victory for the AllNet Resort and Arena group, with Clark County finally greenlighting their project. The new opening date was pushed back again, this time to 2019. However, there are two particular quotes I want to highlight here when this whole agreement, this whole concept, this whole thing went down. One from Jackie Robinson and one from the Clark County Commissioner. Robinson said during this meeting, "We have 100% of the money." Meanwhile, the Clark County Commissioner added, he, as in Robinson, has got the money in the bank. Apparently, AllNet Arena had hired the same accounting firm as John Spano because those statements were absolutely ridiculous. Since we're here, it should be noted that T-Mobile Arena had already been completed and opened for more than a year and was, of course, hosting the Vegas Golden Knights. As for AllNet Arena, which was only a few months behind T-Mobile Arena in terms of launching and in terms of groundbreaking, well, it was still nothing more than a flat piece of land. That is not going to be changing anytime soon. For nearly 2 years after that meeting, where the county greenlit the project, nothing happened. Curious as to why the site, which had been approved for a multi-billion-dollar development, was currently nothing more than a mosquito breeding ground filled with stagnant water pools, the Clark County Commissioners called in Robinson and asked him a more professional version of the question, "What the hell are you doing, dude?" Robinson then cobbled together an excuse as old as the day is long. The check was in the mail. Well, okay, let's be fair. He had a updated version of this classic excuse. He claimed the money for the project was coming from Qatar, Switzerland, banks in Europe, and the States, which all required more time to get into his bank account. In other words, AllNet Arena was good for the money. You just had to trust them. Wait, though, I believe I remember like a minute ago, I just said Robinson claimed he had 100% of the money for the project. Now he's waiting on it to arrive in his bank account. How does that even work? You may also be thinking to yourself, this is like the 4th time in this story that Robinson has said he had the money, he was ready to go with the cash, only for him to fail to produce a dime when it came time to pay up. And that is a very good and a very valid observation. One the Clark County Commissioners had as well. In 2021, they had finally had enough and gave AllNet Resort and Arena the ultimatum to shit or get off the pot, for lack of a better term. Those behind the project were forced to sign a performance agreement which put it on the clock and established a plan for what would happen should construction never actually be completed. The end of 2022 was seen as the last final deadline for them to break ground on this ridiculous Las Vegas NBA arena. By break ground, we mean actually starting construction, not Reggie Theus holding a shovel and pushing around some dirt. In February of that year, Robinson once again claimed to have all the funding he needed, while a sentence later waving the reddest of red flags. He said that they were using cryptocurrency to help raise funds for the project. Come on, if the project is funded though, you wouldn't need to dabble in crypto. And if you are trying your hand at crypto, that means the project isn't actually funded. Seriously, who were they even trying to fool with this? Unsurprisingly, the cryptocurrency play did not work out for the group, though they did get an absolutely wild Hail Mary 2 weeks before the final deadline that appeared to save the project once and for all. Clearwater Perpetual Master Trust announced it would be financing things, and construction on AllNet Resort and Arena would start in earnest in 2023. In fact, a deadline of September 6th that year was set for work to kick off. And then nothing happened. As September 6th rapidly approached, the group behind the project filed another request for an extension, this one for 90 days, as they wouldn't be able to begin the construction work by that deadline. Clark County, for its part, was ready to wash its hands of this entire saga. AllNet's real incompetence, though, was on full display during a Clark County Commissioners meeting for that extension, in which one of their spokespeople claimed the project had all the permits and approvals in place, only for Sammy Riel, director of the Department of Comprehensive Planning, to point out they only had a portion of one permit in place. Honestly, we shouldn't be surprised that the group would try this track. I mean, the original concept of a retractable roof basketball arena is absolutely ridiculous. This is just adding on to that legacy of being just wild and outlandish. Mercifully, though, the plug was finally pulled on AllNet Resort and Arena in November of 2023, more than a decade after the project had first been announced. The only thing they managed to accomplish during this decade of planning and scheming and saying they had money but never actually having money was turning that parking lot used at the groundbreaking into a flat dirt surface. All things considered, this arena, as ridiculous as it was, could have worked in Las Vegas. Admittedly, some of the design choices were really poor. I mean, really, they're just stupid. A retractable roof on a basketball stadium is the most unnecessary feature imaginable. Why anyone would need this or think this was a good idea is a question that has never been explained to me. Retractable roof or not, a group, not all net, but a savvy group of people who understood Las Vegas and how the event scene worked could have kept that facility full for 200 plus days of year, bringing in different events, whether it was an NBA team or not, or just the concerts, or just the rodeo, or arena football, or whatever the case may be. It could have worked. Probably shouldn't have had a retractable roof, but that's not the discussion right here. The problem was the people planning the development had no clue what they were doing. Instead, the group led by Robinson kept ludicrously claiming they had the money to make this arena happen, only to never even come close to having the money. By the way, this is seemingly a story playing out with the Oakland A's ownership, Bally's, and their hopeless attempts to get something built on the strip for baseball. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it, and the Athletics ownership, John Fisher, are seemingly on their own path to nothing but net. As for a National Basketball Association arena in Las Vegas, well, that still remains a possibility to be built one of these days. However, I'm guessing developers will eschew the retractable roof. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to know a little bit more about the NBA arena that found itself named after a scam, well, check out the video in the upper right hand corner of your screen. That, by the way, one of my personal favorite stories of all time. That does it for me, Shine Hollis. This is the Touchback, and as always, hashtag take it out to the 25.